I still remember the moment I realized I wasn't invited to my own brother's wedding. My parents, they didn't even tell me directly. I found out when I overheard them on the phone talking about how it wouldn't look right if I attended. I was 24 and suddenly I felt invisible in my own family. My heart was pounding, my hands were shaking, and the world seemed to turn upside down in a single instant. I tried to confront them, but they brushed me off, saying things like, "This is a family celebration, it's complicated. You wouldn't understand." Complicated. I had spent my entire life being the good child, the responsible one, the one who never caused trouble. Yet, in the blink of an eye, I was erased from one of the most important days in my brother's life. For days, I sat in my room, feeling betrayed and humiliated. Friends tried to console me, but nothing could numb the sting of rejection. Every picture I saw from the wedding on social media felt like a punch in the gut, and yet something inside me refused to stay silent. Then, a week after the wedding, my phone rang. It was the wedding planner, a woman I had never met, but her voice was urgent, almost trembling. "I think I need to tell you something about the wedding." My curiosity shot through the roof. I couldn't hang up. I didn't know at that moment that what she was about to reveal would turn everything upside down and give me a chance I never imagined. She started talking about something my parents had kept secret, something they had been trying desperately to hide from everyone. And as she spoke, I realized that the wedding I had been erased from was not what it seemed. There were lies, betrayals, and a plan that my parents thought would ruin me without anyone ever knowing. I sat there, frozen, as she described details that made my blood run cold. The people I trusted most had been plotting behind my back. And suddenly, a thought formed in my mind: if they could treat me like this, then maybe it was time I showed them what happens when someone underestimates me. But I had to be careful. I couldn't rush. Every move had to be calculated, every word, every step perfect. And the more I learned from her, the more I realized just how deep the deception went. I knew then that this wasn't just about a wedding. It was about every insult, every humiliation, every time I was ignored or belittled. And now I had a chance, a secret, powerful chance. The planner hesitated before speaking the next part. "I don't know if I should even tell you this, but they didn't expect anyone to find out what happened after the ceremony." Her words hung in the air, and in that moment, I felt a fire ignite inside me. This was bigger than revenge. This was about justice. And the first move had already been made, though I didn't realize it yet. I didn't sleep that night. My mind raced over every word the planner had said, every detail about the wedding, every secret my parents thought I would never discover. It was all there, like a map leading to the truth. And the truth was burning inside me. I felt a mix of fear and exhilaration, like standing at the edge of a cliff, knowing I had to jump, but also knowing the fall could change everything. Over the next few days, I started piecing together everything I had missed. Old photos, messages, even small hints I had ignored before. They suddenly made sense. My parents had spent months, maybe years, manipulating the narrative, keeping me out of the wedding, ensuring that my brother's big day would be perfect in their eyes, but at my expense. They thought I would just fade into the background, ashamed and silent. But they underestimated me. Then came the first real clue that the planner had left me. An email, sent in secret, with a subject line that made my heart skip. "What they don't want you to see." I clicked it, and there it was, photos, videos, and conversations from the wedding that my parents had tried to erase. Pictures showing the bride's family whispering about me, conversations about my absence, and most shocking of all, the part my parents had played in trying to convince my brother that I didn't matter. I felt my hands tighten around the phone. Every word, every gesture, every manipulation, they had underestimated the one person who had nothing left to lose. And I realized something terrifying and thrilling at the same time. I now had power. Not the kind of power that comes from anger alone, but the kind that comes from knowing secrets, power that could shift everything in ways they would never see coming. I decided to start small. Not obvious, not messy, subtle. A little whisper here, a carefully planted suggestion there. Every interaction, every casual conversation became a calculated move. I watched my parents carefully, noticing the cracks in their confidence, the subtle fear that no one else could see. It was intoxicating. For the first time in years, I felt in control. And then came the call that made my pulse jump again. The planner had discovered something else, something bigger, something that could change everything. "It's about the gifts and the registry," she said, her voice low and urgent. "They didn't tell you the truth about who controlled everything. And now you can." I listened carefully as she explained. The wedding, the invitations, even the money, they had manipulated all of it. And they hadn't just erased me from the guest list, they had erased me from the story, from the legacy, from every memory they wanted to present to the world. And yet, in their arrogance, they had left a thread, a single point of vulnerability. I started planning every step, every conversation, every social media post. Nothing was accidental. I created an online presence, small at first, almost invisible, but enough to start gathering attention. And slowly, without anyone realizing, I began to insert myself into the narrative they thought I would never touch. It wasn't easy. My parents were cunning, And my brother was innocent in all of this. He didn't know the truth either. And that made it worse because I had to navigate carefully, making sure that my actions would reveal the deception without harming the one person I had always loved. I had to be smart. I had to be patient. Revenge without precisions is just noise, and I wasn't here to make noise. I was here to make a statement. Weeks passed, and with every move I made, I felt them notice. Small things at first, a raised eyebrow, a fleeting look of unease, a question that hinted at suspicion. I kept my face calm, my voice steady, but inside I was thrilled. They were finally feeling a taste of what it had been like for me, the fear of losing control, the realization that the people they tried to manipulate could see right through them. Then came the next big moment. The planner called me late one night, her voice trembling with excitement. "I've managed to get access to the guest list and the seating arrangements for the reception," she whispered. "And you have an opportunity to be there in a way they would never expect." My heart pounded. This was the moment I had been waiting for, the chance to step back into a world that had tried to erase me. But I had to be careful. I couldn't just walk in and confront them. That would be too obvious. The art of revenge, I reminded myself, is in the subtle humiliation, the slow revelation, the growing panic. And that was exactly what I was going to deliver. I spent the next days carefully constructing my appearance. Every detail mattered: the clothes, the demeanor, even the way I carried myself. I didn't want them to see anger. I wanted them to see calm, control, confidence, a presence they could not ignore. And when the day came, I walked into the reception, a quiet storm, unnoticed at first. I watched from the edges, absorbing every detail, every conversation, every gesture, and then I started planting small seeds of doubt. An offhand comment here, a subtle reminder there. People began to notice things they had overlooked, inconsistencies in stories, small lies that no one had caught before. I watched as whispers started circulating, eyes flickering toward my parents with suspicion. I smiled faintly, but only in my mind. They had no idea what was coming. The planner kept me updated discreetly, letting me know when my parents grew uneasy, when they started questioning each other, when their carefully constructed story began to unravel. Every revelation, every secret they had buried so deeply, was now coming to light in small, precise doses. And with each passing hour, my sense of satisfaction grew. But I wasn't done yet. The biggest part was still to come. I knew that my final move had to be unforgettable, something that would leave a mark, something they could never erase. I had to wait for the perfect moment, the moment when their arrogance would betray them completely. And as I watched them scramble, trying to hold everything together, I realized they were closer to breaking than I had ever hoped. And then the planner whispered something that made my blood run cold, and at the same time set my mind ablaze with possibilities. "They've hidden one last secret," she said. "One they think no one will ever find. But I found it, and when you see it, you'll know how powerful this moment can be." I felt a chill run down my spine. This was it. The final piece of the puzzle. The moment that would define everything. I took a deep breath, feeling the tension build, knowing that everything I had planned, every careful move, was about to reach its climax, and yet I knew I had to be patient. One wrong step, one careless word, and it could all fall apart. I had waited years for this moment, and I wasn't about to ruin it now. As I sat there, watching my parents fumble, watching their perfect world begin to crack, I realized revenge isn't just about anger, it's about timing, precision, control. And the feeling that comes when the people who thought they could hurt you realize they were never in control at all. The planner's next words made me shiver with anticipation. "Are you ready? Because once this happens, there's no going back. They'll never forget it. And you'll finally have what you've been waiting for." I swallowed hard, my heart racing. I was ready. But just as I was about to make my next move, the planner whispered something that stopped me in my tracks. Something I had never expected, something that would change everything. Her words hung in the air like a shadow I couldn't shake. "It's not just what they did to you," she whispered. "It's what they thought they buried and how badly they underestimated you." I leaned closer, my pulse hammering in my ears. Every detail she revealed made the picture clearer and darker. My parents hadn't just kept me out of the wedding, they had manipulated nearly everyone involved. Guests, relatives, even my own brother. They were all pawns in a game I hadn't realized I was part of. But the planner, she had found the cracks in their armor, and she was handing me the keys. I spent the next few days watching from a careful distance. I couldn't make a move too soon. That was the thrill, the delicious tension, watching them stumble while I remained invisible, untouchable. I studied their faces at every family gathering, every subtle glance, every conversation. Their pride, their arrogance, it all became fuel. They thought they had won, thought I was defeated. And they were wrong. Then came the first real opportunity. My parents hosted a small post-wedding gathering, a thank you dinner for the close family. Everyone was there laughing, sharing stories of the wedding, oblivious to the storm brewing silently beneath the surface. I wasn't on the official guest list, but I had arranged for a subtle entrance, a quiet presence that would go unnoticed at first. I entered the room, calm, composed, a ghost in their perfect little world. They didn't see me. Not yet. I observed letting them talk, letting them brag about the wedding, about how flawless it had been. Every word was a dagger, every laugh a reminder of what they had tried to take from me. And still, I waited. Patience, that was the key. The planner had given me information about my parents' weaknesses, the hidden tensions they kept buried. Small details about financial decisions, unspoken grudges, even a secret argument that had been carefully covered up. I stored it all, each piece a tool, each piece a potential weapon. Then, as the evening progressed, I began planting seeds of doubt. A casual comment about a missing gift, a quiet question about an odd expense, nothing overt, just enough to make a few people in the room glance at my parents strangely. Eyes flickered, voices hesitated, subtle whispers began to circulate. I smiled faintly to myself. The first cracks were forming. My parents noticed, of course, I saw it in their faces, the small flicker of fear behind their practiced smiles. They had spent years convincing themselves that no one could touch them, that their control was absolute. And now they were realizing it was not. I didn't need to say a word. The tension, the unease, the tiny glances exchanged across the room, it was doing all the work for me. As the night went on, the planner whispered updates through subtle messages on my phone. "Your father's worried about the registry discrepancies," she wrote. "Your mother is trying to cover it up, but the guests are starting to notice. Keep going." I felt a thrill I had never known before. Every detail was falling into place. Every secret they had buried was resurfacing, and I was orchestrating it all. And then the bombshell. The planner sent me a photo, a candid shot of my parents arguing in private. Their voices were raised, their faces red with panic. A mismanaged payment, a missing gift, a careless comment that had spiraled out of control. Their perfect image was crumbling before my eyes, and I didn't even have to touch it yet. I was the invisible hand, guiding the chaos. The night ended, but the tension lingered like smoke. I left quietly, unnoticed, a phantom in the shadows. My parents, exhausted and anxious, had no idea that the person they had tried to erase was already rewriting the story. I returned home, adrenaline still pumping, a smile playing on my lips. Every move I made now had consequences, and I was ready to make them count. The next step required subtlety. I couldn't rush, couldn't expose everything at once. The art of revenge is in the slow burn, the tension that grows until the inevitable collapse. I began reaching out quietly to certain guests who had noticed the inconsistencies, hinting, suggesting, making them question what they had seen. Whispers started to spread. Small suspicions became larger ones. My parents were starting to feel it even if they didn't yet understand where it was coming from. And then, an unexpected twist. My brother, oblivious to the manipulation, approached me one evening. "I don't understand why things are off," he said, a frown creasing his face. "I thought the wedding went perfectly, but some people are saying things. Are you involved?" I looked at him calmly, carefully. "I'm not sure what you mean," I said softly. But inside, I felt a pang. I didn't want to hurt him. He had been manipulated too, just like me. He deserved to know the truth eventually, but not yet. Not until the moment was right, I let him walk away, leaving him in a swirl of confusion. The tension was building, the pieces were aligning, and I could feel the moment of revelation approaching. The planner had one final piece of intelligence, the secret my parents had buried so deep that they thought it could never resurface. I stared at the message on my phone, my heart racing. This was it, the ultimate leverage, the key to everything. But it wasn't just about exposing them, it was about timing, precision, making sure the shock and the humiliation landed perfectly. I could almost see the panic on their faces, the disbelief, the fear, and I smiled, just faintly. Days later, another family event, this time a casual dinner with extended relatives. I arrived quietly, blending in unnoticed at first. I had arranged for a subtle reveal, a quiet confrontation that would let the secrets unravel naturally, like a trap snapping shut. Guests began talking, whispers started, and I stayed in the shadows, letting the tension rise. Then, a carefully placed comment from me, innocuous, almost casual, triggered it. One guest raised an eyebrow, another whispered something, and suddenly the small doubts became questions. My parents' eyes darted around, searching for the source. They didn't see me, not yet. And then the first crack appeared. A slip of the tongue, a hesitation, a facial twitch. I had predicted this, of course, but watching it happen in real life was far more satisfying. The control I had been denied for years, I was taking it back, piece by piece, silently, perfectly. The planner texted again. "It's working. They're panicking. Keep calm. Don't rush. They'll do the rest themselves." I felt a rush of power, not from anger, but from strategy. Revenge isn't just about retaliation, it's about proving that the people who thought they could erase you were never in control at all. As the evening wore on, whispers turned into murmurs, murmurs into direct questions. My parents' perfect fa-aid was slipping. Faces that had once been friendly now looked skeptical, questioning, suspicious. And through it all, I remained calm, composed, untouchable. And then, the planner's final message of the night. "Tomorrow, the final piece, they will never see it coming. Are you ready?" I stared at my phone, my pulse racing. Ready. I had been ready for years. But I knew one thing, this next move had to be perfect. One mistake, One misstep and everything could collapse. And yet the thrill, the anticipation, the power of being invisible while orchestrating everything, it was intoxicating. I closed my eyes for a moment, imagining the moment when all the secrets would come crashing down, when my parents would realize that the person they tried to erase was not only present, but untouchable. I could almost feel the shock, the fear, the humiliation. It would be beautiful, precise, and unforgettable. And just as I opened my eyes, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the planner. Short, simple, chilling. They think it's over. They have no idea what's coming next. I smiled. Calm, quiet, controlled, they had no idea. The next morning, I woke up with a single thought: precision. Every move I made today had to count. The planner had given me everything I needed: proof, photos, messages, subtle manipulations, and now it was just a matter of timing. I had to be patient. Revenge is like a chess game. One wrong move, and the victory is lost. I spent hours reviewing everything. My parents' conversations, the way they interacted with relatives, even the way they laughed and smiled, it was all carefully calculated. They had spent their lives crafting a perfect image, and now that image was starting to crack. The planner had found a weak point, a series of overlooked details, small mistakes that seemed insignificant at the time, but now they were weapons. By evening, I was ready. Another family gathering, a casual get-together with a few close relatives. They thought it was just a friendly visit, a harmless evening. They didn't know that I had spent days preparing for this exact moment, orchestrating every subtle move, every offhand remark, every planted hint. I arrived quietly, letting the chatter flow around me. My parents were at the center, laughing, smiling, basking in their sense of control. And I stayed at the edges, invisible, watching, waiting. The tension was already in the air. A few guests had noticed discrepancies in my parents' stories. A few subtle hints were already making them question what they had been told. I could feel it. The slow unraveling had begun. I started with small gestures. A quiet comment here, a casual question there. Nothing obvious, nothing dramatic, just enough to plant doubt. A guest glanced at my father and whispered something I had hinted at, eyes wide. Another guest raised a skeptical brow, murmuring under their breath. My parents noticed, of course, but they didn't know who was behind it. Not yet. And then the first crack appeared. My mother, who had always carried herself with an unshakable confidence, hesitated. A word stumbled from her mouth, a brief pause in her perfectly rehearsed explanation. I could see it, the flicker of fear, the tiny sign that she was starting to realize something was off. My father noticed too, his face tightening, eyes scanning the room, searching for the source of the unease. I stayed calm, composed, a silent observer. They were unraveling, and I hadn't even made my presence known. Every whispered doubt, every questioning glance, every subtle hint was part of the plan. They were walking into a trap they didn't even know existed. And then came the planner's call. Her voice was urgent but calm, like a conductor guiding the final movement of a symphony. "It's time," she said. "The final piece. They've hidden it so deep, they think no one will ever find it. But you have the chance to reveal it perfectly, and they won't know what hit them." My pulse quickened. I had waited years for this, meticulously planning every step, every subtle manipulation. And now the final act was within reach. The planner had given me access to the secret, the proof that would expose everything, a revelation so shocking that my parents' carefully crafted world would crumble in an instant. I stayed quiet for a few more minutes, letting the tension build. Guests were already exchanging glances, whispers filling the room. My parents were trying to maintain control, but the cracks were widening. I could see the panic in their eyes, subtle, fleeting, but unmistakable. And I smiled faintly. Just in my mind, they had underestimated me, and now they were paying the price. Finally, I stepped forward calmly, confidently. My presence alone turned heads. My parents froze, their smiles faltering. The room went quiet. The subtle chaos halting as everyone sensed that something significant was about to happen. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't accuse anyone. I simply let the silence speak, the tension thicken. Then, the first revelation. A photo subtly displayed on my phone, casually shown to a guest who had been skeptical all along. A picture that revealed a lie my parents had told, a truth they had tried to hide. Gasps rippled through the room. Eyes widened. Whispers grew louder. My parents' faces drained of color. They tried to cover, to explain, but every word only made the contradictions clearer. I let it simmer. I didn't push, I didn't shout, I didn't need to. The pieces were falling into place perfectly. Every question, every doubt, every tiny revelation was orchestrated to make them unravel in front of everyone. And slowly, methodically, it worked. The tension built to a point where every guest was watching, waiting for the next slip. And then another piece of evidence. A conversation I had uncovered, carefully recorded, showing my parents discussing how to manipulate the wedding, how to erase me, how to control the narrative. I let it play quietly, just audible enough for a few guests to hear. The shock, the disbelief, the murmurs of outrage, it was intoxicating. My parents were frantic now, trying to maintain composure, but the cracks were growing into chasms. I watched them calm, controlled, untouchable. The humiliation was slow, perfect, methodical. They had thought they could erase me, but now, in front of everyone, their lies were exposed, their manipulation laid bare. And I was finally visible, the one they had underestimated for years, orchestrating their downfall without even raising my voice. The planner whispered through, a subtle message guiding me, confirming every move. Wait for it, the final reveal is coming. They'll never recover from this. Be patient, the timing is perfect. And I waited. The tension in the room was palpable. Guests were leaning in, whispers turning into direct questions. My parents' confidence had evaporated, replaced by desperation, fear, confusion. They didn't know how much I knew, how carefully I had planned every step, how completely I had anticipated their reactions. Then, the moment came. A subtle reference to a hidden document, a quiet question about an unexplained transaction, and suddenly the room erupted. Guests were confronting my parents with questions they couldn't answer. My parents' faces were pale, their composure shattered. I stayed silent, letting the chaos unfold. Every gasp, every shocked look, every questioning glance was exactly as I had planned. I could feel the power coursing through me, not from anger, but from control, precision, patience. This was the revenge I had dreamed of, the exposure of years of betrayal, humiliation, and manipulation. And yet, I still hadn't revealed everything. The final piece, the one secret that would completely shatter their world, was still in my hands. The planner's last message came in, brief and chilling. They think it's over. They have no idea what's left. Are you ready? I smiled, calm, composed, but my mind raced. Ready? I had been ready for years. But I knew one thing, this next move had to be perfect. One misstep, one careless action, and everything could collapse. And as I looked at my parents, desperate, confused, humiliated, I knew the final act was coming. The room was silent now, everyone holding their breath, waiting for the next revelation. And I held the key, the secret they had buried so deep they thought no one would ever uncover it. I felt a thrill unlike anything I had ever known. Revenge isn't about anger, it's about control, timing, precision, and the knowledge that the people who tried to erase you were now completely at your mercy. I was ready. But just as I was about to make my final move, my phone buzzed again. Another message from the planner, short, simple. Perfect. They still don't know. But they will, soon. And in that moment, I realized the moment I had been waiting for. The ultimate revelation was closer than ever. I took a deep breath. This was it. Years of humiliation, betrayal, and invisibility had led to this single moment. The planner had guided me perfectly, every subtle clue, every planted whisper, every doubt, it had all built toward this. And now, I had the ultimate leverage, the secret my parents had thought buried forever. I stood in the room, calm, composed, untouchable. My parents' eyes flickered toward me, confusion, fear, and a hint of recognition in their faces. They still didn't understand. They still thought they were in control. But they were wrong, completely wrong. I took out the evidence. Not aggressively, not with anger, but with precision. Photos, messages, recordings, proof of every lie, every manipulation, every cruel decision they had made to erase me from my brother's wedding, to control the story, to humiliate me. I didn't need to say a word at first. The room absorbed it on its own. Guests whispered, their eyes widening in shock. My parents' faces went pale, their smiles fading, their attempts to explain tripping over each other. Every lie, every excuse they had rehearsed was collapsing under the weight of the truth. My father opened his mouth, but no words came. My mother's hand shook as she tried to hide the evidence, but it was too late. Then I spoke. Quietly, calmly, each word deliberate. You thought I wouldn't notice. You thought I would stay silent. You thought I didn't matter? My voice didn't shake. My hands didn't tremble. I was finally in control, and everyone could feel it. But I see everything. And now everyone else does too. Gas filled the room. Eyes darted between me and my parents. Faces that had once looked at me with pity or indifference now held respect, fear, and disbelief. I let the silence linger, letting the weight of my words sink in. I revealed everything step by step. The manipulations, the secret conversations, the lies told to family and friends. Every hidden detail of the wedding, every attempt to erase me from the story, every insult and betrayal, it was all laid bare. And as the truth unfolded, I watched my parents crumble. Their perfect image shattered, their control gone, replaced by shame and panic. The planner, discreetly observing from a distance, sent me a final message. Now, it's time. I revealed the last, most devastating piece, the financial manipulation they had hidden, the deliberate efforts to control the narrative, the hidden agreements with vendors, even my brother's own misunderstanding, orchestrated by them. Guests gasped. Some whispered in disbelief. Some stared, mouths open. My parents were frozen, trying to find a way out, any explanation, but there was none. The truth was unstoppable, undeniable, crushing. And then my brother stepped forward. His eyes were wide, his voice trembling. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you let this happen? He looked at our parents, then at me, realization dawning. All these years they lied to me too? I shook my head slowly. They wanted you to believe it was perfect. But perfection comes at a cost, and they thought that cost was me. Tears welled in my eyes, but not of anger, of release, of justice finally being served. I had waited so long for this, and now finally the scales were balanced. My parents stood there, broken, humiliated, their own arrogance their undoing. They tried to protest, to explain, to justify, but no one listened. The room had turned against them, not with malice, but with shock at the truth they had hidden for so long. I took a final step forward. I forgave them in my heart a long time ago, I said softly, but forgiveness doesn't erase truth, and truth is finally free. I looked around the room. Friends, relatives, everyone who had witnessed the fallout, eyes wide, faces stunned. They now saw me not as the invisible child, not as the humiliated sibling, but as the one who had survived, observed, and finally reclaimed everything they had tried to take from me. My parents slumped into their chairs, defeated, stripped of pride, stripped of control. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt before: power, clarity, and a sense of justice. Not vengeance born of cruelty, but the satisfaction of setting things right, of making the truth known. And as I walked out of that room, leaving whispers, shocked faces, and broken illusions behind, I realized something else. The planner had been right. They had underestimated me. They had thought they could erase me, control me, humiliate me, and yet here I was, standing taller than ever, calm, composed, untouchable. I didn't need their apologies. I didn't need their recognition. The satisfaction came from knowing the truth was out, their arrogance exposed, and my own worth proven, not to them, but to myself. That night, I sat alone, reflecting everything. The betrayal, the humiliation, the long years of silence. And yet the revenge, the exposure, the balance finally restored, had brought an unexpected clarity. I wasn't just the sibling they tried to erase. I was the one who had seen it all, endured it all, and turned it into something powerful. And as I looked at the messages, the evidence, the reminders of every manipulation, I realized something even more profound. Revenge is not just about getting back. It's about reclaiming your life, your dignity, your voice, and making sure that those who tried to silence you understand that nothing is stronger than the person who refuses to be invisible. My parents never spoke to me the same way again. They avoided me, tried to regain some semblance of control, but it was gone. Every glance, every conversation, every attempt to manipulate was met with my calm, quiet presence. The presence of someone they could no longer underestimate, and in that quiet power, I finally felt peace. Not because I had destroyed them completely, but because I had taken control of my story, my narrative, and my life. I had turned humiliation into triumph, betrayal into clarity, invisibility into undeniable presence. Years later, when my brother finally understood everything, he approached me. You were incredible," he said, voice shaking. "I never knew." I smiled softly, not with malice, but with the quiet confidence of someone who had survived, endured, and emerged stronger. Sometimes, I said, the truth has to be seen, not shouted. And sometimes the people who try to erase you need to realize you're impossible to forget. And with that, I finally let go. The story was mine now. Every betrayal, every humiliation, every secret had led to this moment. And I knew deep down that no one would ever dare underestimate me again. The planner had whispered once more before disappearing from my life. Revenge is sweetest when it's precise. You've mastered it. And in that quiet, victorious moment, I finally understood the power of patience, precision, and truth. The people who had tried to remove me from my own life had learned the hardest lesson of all. Underestimating someone who refuses to be invisible is the biggest mistake you can ever make.